So it is Election Day tomorrow, and you likely know there's more than just city and school district leaders on your local ballot. For example, if you live in Caldwell, you have a chance to approve a bond for 2 new fire stations. If you live in Middleton, you're going to decide if the city is going to remain a dry city. And if you live in Valley County, you're being asked to fund a new ambulance district, or not. You could say no to all 3 of those things. As for those who live in Ada County, the state's most populated, there's a $72 million bond on the ballot to build a bigger, better jail. And maybe you got this week at some point, this mailer. A lot of you did, including a viewer who sent us this message when they got theirs. Ada County Sheriff's Department, sheriff's office that is breaking the law by sending mailers at the taxpayer's expense, advocating for the jail expansion. That was the viewer comment. And you probably have had enough mailers and text messages sent to your phone and to your mailbox to, well, enough to wallpaper a living room. And sure, they can be annoying, but are they illegal? That depends on your interpretation of Idaho's Public Integrity in Elections Act. Well, how would Idaho's leader of state elections interpret it? Here's Joe Paris.
Lots of literature landing in inboxes and mailboxes ahead of the election. This one about the Ada County jail bond, though, it has some asking about the Public Integrity in Elections Act. Best person to ask, Idaho's Secretary of State, Phil McGrain.
It's actually a relatively new statute that the legislature passed, really prohibiting the use of public funds for political activity or other things, the things that probably many of your viewers who are calling in are expecting and saying, you know, you can't promote yourself as a candidate for office using public funds, for example.
That extends to government entities like Ada County, using public funds to promote a bond item. That includes mailers, text messages, and websites, all utilized by Ada County. However, there is an important caveat in the law.
Particularly as it relates to this, there is an exemption. There's a series of exemptions in the Public Integrity and Elections Act, and one of them is allowing districts who are working on bonds or levies to provide educational information, including the expected tax impact of any bonds or levies that will be put on the ballot before a voter.
The jail bond mailer does include an in-depth analysis of the tax impact to the community.
And I think that's where this fits in, and you can see where the Ada County Sheriff's Office, I think, is attempting to do some of that education with the materials that they provided out there. But when it comes in a slick form that looks like a campaign mailer or something else, I think that does raise some questions like you've experienced.
The informational mailer seems to play it pretty safe with language, but the verb need, for example, can seem biased depending on its context.
They're not saying vote for it, but I guess where's the line in terms of information and advocacy?
I think this is one of the big questions, and it's one of the challenges, particularly with bonds and levies. And you can see over the history, the legislature has struggled with where to draw this line. And similarly, districts have struggled. And I think that we're seeing that here with Ada County in terms of what is the line in terms of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable.
To be clear, Ada County meets requirements of the informational flyer. There is, however, a major nuance.
I think this is an example of that where it does appear they're getting very close to the line. They're not on any of the materials I've seen, whether it's the website, the mail, or others, saying vote for specifically, but they're certainly providing information that probably lends a voter to at least be more aware of what's going on in the jail. And I can see why some people have concerns in terms of, does it get a little too close to that line?
So something to keep an eye on for sure. And Ada County confirms to us that this informational flyer, they sent it out and they paid for it. And Ada County, they're not hiding that. And it's also important to note that they do talk about things like alternative sentencing on their site, things that they did to try and cut down the jail population, which is something that people against the jail bond have said, well, why don't you utilize things like cutting down just the amount of people that come into it? So, Brian, it's a very interesting, nuanced situation. Again, this is a law that came out in 2018, so still kind of feeling it out.
Secretary of State McGrain mentioned an exception to this if you're providing information, but when does it cross the line, as you talked about, from being informational to being advocating for? There's some precedent on this, isn't there?
Yeah, and it's actually going through the court system right now up in the Bonneville County area. And I'll just tell you this, there's a lawsuit on this exact topic that alleges that in 2022 that there were some district employees at the Bonneville School District that used district funds totaling over $13,000 to print and distribute promotional materials that were advocating for the school bond issue that was on the ballot back in 2022. I'll tell you this, a court will have to decide in the Bonneville County situation and the Ada County situation if it gets to that that point. There's a 40-day window after Election Day, Brian, where somebody could file a complaint and basically said, we don't think this is fair. If a judge were to find that, then basically what would happen is if the bond passed, they would have to throw it out because of the infringement on the law. So it's very nuanced, and that word need, that could be something that gets stuck on it. I know in Bonneville, there was a handful of words they were stuck on in terms of what was on the flyers, what was on the promotional materials.
They use the words need, aged, and overcrowding to promote their schools and the need for filling them, I guess, or replacing them.
And it will be difficult, too, because Ada County, they have a whole website set up answering questions, talking about alternative sentencing. So a lawyer would have to go through all of it and decide if he thinks it's biased or not.
And Ada County Sheriff's Office says they're the ones who put this out.
Ada County put it out, yes. It's informational.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Thank you very much, Joe. We all know about